Okay, welcome to the Quadrant community call of Tuesday, August the 20th, 2024. We have a pretty packed agenda, so I'd say we get started. There are also some issues talking points in the second section about the project, basically about progress. I added housekeeping to that label of that, so there are some other items that I think fit there. But the first item is a real topic. So let's just start. Alex, you want to take it away?
Yeah. So I labeled that like authorwasm, but it's actually more than that. But anyways, so just to inform people, it's probably relevant to the stuff that Craig is going to cover later if you want to cut the release. Looks like something's busted in the in accessing some of the auth stuff, apparently, because based on what I heard from QE, like that's the only test case that's an issue in rate limiting. So authenticated rate limiting, even though it's trying to do something to make sure that you're not authenticated, it's still authenticated rate limiting, as being not authenticated is authenticated concern. Sounds weird, but so it is. So that's a thing that's apparently broken. I'm trying to get something working locally that tries to narrow down the problem. I was hoping it was all my changes in the WASM shim that got merged recently, but QE tells me no. Apparently that SHA passes our tests. So what I did do in just for context, I didn't change anything in the API that you use to talk to the WASM shim. I had to configure it, but internally it uses a cell interpreter to evaluate all the conditions, right? So because the conditions you read in your rate limiting policies are being evaluated in the WASM shim, not in the Metador, as sometimes people get confused. So there is that bug. And that leads me to the next stuff. I think I raised that in the past, certainly with Guy already. When we said we will be moving auth to WASM, we said it's an internal refactoring kind of a thing. But it isn't really, in the sense that when you have data flow mostly from auth to rate limiting, the way you would get to that data is with this first bullet point that you see under create new binding. So metadata dot filter metadata, and then this weirdo thing that says envoy.filters.http.external auth. That whole thing is a key inside a map. That's the filter metadata thing. So that's spec by Envoy. So that means we're already, as you can tell by the name, right? So that already means we're sort of leaking implementation detail of how that stuff works to the end user, because they're now confronted with that. Plus, there is this very weirdo thing with the backslash dots that you see in there. And then the dot identity dot user ID, that's when you're inside the struct, that's external auth metadata inside the filter state. But because we're not going to do that inside the external auth filter anymore, but rather in WASM ourselves, I like to hope, I don't know for sure, but that Envoy won't let us mutate that other filter state metadata as we see fit. That'd be weird. But even if that's the case, I don't think that's awesome. So my idea and my proposal, and I know Guy isn't here, he's probably the one who would have the most opinions on this, but I just want to like see that in people's mind, is to, in the well-known attributes, is to actually create a root binding for all of our stuff. So you could have like a rate limiting one, or a limitador one, or an auth one, or authorino one, or whatever we want to call them, or as Craig proposed, like external auth dot whatever. The important part is the first part, right? So auth, authorino, external auth z, or auth z, or whatever. And then that would be effectively an alias binding to whatever, how that stuff works underneath, and not expose that to the user. There is no reason right now to do anything with rate limiting, because rate limiting is post auth and is the last step in the filter chain that Kuadrant exposes. But there could be a case to also have, like, I don't know, rate underscore limiting dot, then what have you, when we do pre auth, because you could, I don't have a use case for that, but why would you not be able to have data flow from rate limiting into auth? I don't know what you would use that for, but like fundamentally it's the same problem. So bring that up here. If there are opinions, feel free to share them. But even if you don't, like, let it sit. And there is a follow-up meeting. Sorry, I'm searching where it is. Anyways, whenever the rates, the auth rate, the auth meeting happens. When is that meeting happening? All right. I can't find that thing
Just
for
add it to the notes later.
Oh yeah, it's on Wednesday, so it's oh no, we have it tomorrow. So it's tomorrow at my 10 a.m. So 3 p.m. UK time and 4 p.m. Standard European time, or whatever the time is, Central European time. Where I plan to, like, hopefully get consensus on that and move forward with that. I'm thinking that possibly deciding on what that alias binding should be, and then introduce it as an alias binding, which means that you could still use the old thing, so that metadata, blah, 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 or just go for the new thing directly in the next release that Craig will talk about. It should be fairly easy to add the binding, right? So it's just a matter of naming that binding and then eventually go over all the docs and change that so that this becomes like a first class citizen. And I guess, Craig, is your point there is just call it external auth Z thing. Yep.
Yeah, like I like this idea because the first time I came across, I can't remember if it was in rate limiting or if it was in auth. The first time I kind of came across this incredibly long, complicated key, I was like vomiting in my mouth. So I loved the idea of like making this a much more approachable thing, because who remembers all that? But I was thinking, maybe could you chop off basically everything after, like, use everything after the HTTP bit and like shorten it down to that, because that way I know it's still kind of leaking the envoy names maybe, but it's still much more consumable, and it's still somewhat familiar to people who are familiar with using envoy, is kind of my thinking on it.
Yeah. I mean, works to me. I really have no. I mean, if it's to use like a shortened down version, because I realized auth was, it's just, I didn't want to call it on Z or N. And that's why I went down for that. That's the real reason. I think spelling the entire thing out properly is probably desirable, and I didn't think that spelling out Authorino completely, though, was desirable. But yeah, so sure, works for me. I guess.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that the name is not completely independent. It's coupled or linked to the configuration at the auth config level. So we are telling Authorino to bring this information back in some form. So that user ID literally is something you need to put in the auth config.
Oh, sorry, then maybe I wasn't clear.
And
like the stuff I
the
care
same.
about is everything to dot identity. That's what I want to shorten down. like what lives there, then that okay,
including next auth.
okay, wait, where is this doc here? So that's what I'm talking about, renaming to, is this showing? Yes.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
that bit is the one I want to create an alias for.
Yes.
Whatever
Well,
follows indeed is up for, that's what
okay.
users deal with. Yes.
You have to clarify. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So if you want,
Two
like,
months ago, I proposed changing that thing you have highlighted with Kuadrant. Kuadrant.identity.user.
yeah, but so that's my point, right? So today makes no sense at all, and it may never make sense. But if today we have effectively two actions that can happen there, right? So it's auth and rate limiting. Plan is to have pre-auth rate limiting happening. If you would want to feed, let's say, the remainder hits that are available for this IP or whatever, right? To auth as an input data to do whatever, I don't know, right? Use a different auth config if there is less than 100 things remaining or whatever. Like, I think qualifying, so not saying that I'm against Quadrant, but I think having Quadrant.auth then, or Quadrant dot something. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah, sure. I didn't even propose it seriously. It was like name spacing, like we do for other annotation names and things like that, that belongs to us. It's something like quadrant.io, blah, 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 and whatever. So that thing that you highlighted is what we want to abstract. For Envoy is like that. Well, was like that. No longer is going to be like that. But we need to provide some well-known attributes.
Yeah.
For that. Anyway,
Okay,
I don't want to
wrap this up.
extend on this. I mean,
Yeah, so that's it. Anyways, follow up tomorrow, my 10 a.m. with Guy.
Thanks, Alex. Let's move on. I think we all agree on the above and the exact word that should be there tomorrow. David, license scanning with Fossa.
Yeah, do you mind if I grab the screen for a little bit? Nice.
Try it.
Okay. There's 3 items here. They should be fairly quick, so we'll motor on through them. Let's try the full window. If that works, we're good to go. Okay. It's showing up on my screen, so hopefully everyone's seen it. If not, just share. So license scanning, that's the first thing. So as part of onboarding as a CNCF sandbox project, one of the things that being part of the CNCF org and GitHub gives us is this license scanning thing. It means it will scan whatever repos we want and any of its dependencies to see if there's any issues with licenses. So, for example, given we have like a Apache or MIT style license, that kind of thing, if any of the dependencies are not compatible with that, it'll highlight that and it'll run that for each commit back to main. So these are the repos that I have it enabled on. I'll drop some information in the doc after for if you have any issues with this, who to contact, that kind of thing. There's nothing we have to do really unless it shows up on a PR that there's an issue with a license of some dependency. So whenever someone adds a new dependency, that's the most likely time we'll see an issue. So right now, it's only showing one issue with Autorino, but I think that's a false positive. So what you can do, if there's issues that are false positives, you can go in here and you can add you can tell it to ignore it from here on. So initially when I ran it for Quadrant operator, it showed that there were two issues here with these two dependencies. And when looking further into it, you can see that, like it says GPL tree, but actually looking into it, you can see that the license is actually BSD tree, and there's just some random file in a test data folder that happened to have some GPL tree text, so you can ignore it and leave a comment saying, actually, this is fine. The main license of the repo is such and such. And there's a similar story with this Docker dependency as well. So yeah, shouldn't be anything we need to do with that unless some issue pops up on a PR. So I'll pause there before moving to the next topic in case anyone has any questions on that. Yeah, go for it, Guskin.
Yeah, actually, I do have. This morning, I accepted the invitation, so I went through it. I signed up, but I am not assigned to any group or anything. Well, if you go back, there is this CNCF Kuadrant. I'm not part of this. This is kind of group or something.
Yes. So the way it works, because the account with FOSSA is owned by CNCF as a whole,
That's
if I
the
go
org
back to,
or something like that.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, if I go back to all projects, it has lots of other stuff, not just the Quadrant stuff, all these other CNCF projects. So the process, so I can put this in the doc after, the process for adding people to the team is we have to ask Robert Keelty or someone else in CNCF to send an invite. And then once that's done, Robert or myself or someone else in the team can then add that person to the Quadrant team. So it's a little bit manual for user setup, but once it's done once,
I got the invitation.
That should be enough.
I got the invitation and I accepted, but
so I think there's something I need to do now to add you to the group. Yeah, no worries.
This is interesting. I didn't know of this tool. We used to do this manually with a license.xml in the root of the images we ship in Triskel. And we use some tooling for keeping that up to date. So it scans all the library, checks the licenses. Sometimes we have to ask the legal team of Red Hat if we are allowed to ship something with some weird license. But it's nice that we have all this more automated and at least fancy. I don't know. Let's see.
Yeah, I think the main issues that will pop up are generally it spots something that is GPL related. That seems to be the most common thing, and so far it's been mostly false positives. Because if it is actually a GPL dependency, it means if we want to keep using it, we're going to have to change our project to be GPL as well, whichever one it is. Yeah, that whole copyleft viral effect. Cool. So I'll drop some notes in the doc after, and once people accept the invites, I'll add them to the team so they can drill down in here for this kind of stuff. Oh yeah, and also there's a badge thing here that shows up in the README. It created PRs for all these repos, so if you want to just accept that and merge it back, it'll show that as well. So that's the license scanning. So the next topic then is OpenSSF best practices. So this best practices thing, there's a good bit of stuff in here, but the idea is that every project, as it makes its way from sandbox to incubating, should pretty much comply with all these best practices across the different repos that make up a release of the project. Now, there's a lot of different things in here. As I said, they're in different categories here. I've done a first pass on this a couple of weeks ago as best I can without kind of delving deep into each repo. So you can see that there's some items that are not kind of complying at the moment. They may well be. I'd say the majorities actually are, and it just we need to go down and into those repos and just identify how it's complying with that. What I mean by that is, like, for example, on the analysis side, like static code analysis, I think we do this on some repos, if not all. There's some dynamic code analysis stuff. Maybe we do some of that, but it's taking the time to go through these things and see, do we actually do these? And if not, create an issue to add some stuff. The stuff that we're okay on is generally just basic project website. Yeah, that's fine. Community information, how people can contribute. Do we have a good license? All the information is there for everyone to see, and the link is in the notes as well. Yeah, and we get a badge thing as well for the repos for that thing. Yeah, so that's the best practices. Yeah, so pause there again in case anyone has any questions. If anyone wants to help out with this as well, just give me a shout. It might be something I tip away at from time to time. So the third thing then is the Kuadrant blog. So I've made a couple of small changes to the Kuadrant.io website recently, just a nav at the top, if anyone noticed. Now we have this blog thing, and if we go in here, it's a fairly simple list of blog posts. So as we get more posts, they'll show up here. The first one is just a post about being accepted as a CNCF sandbox project. Not much information there, but just something to kick it off. I've been chatting to a couple of different people about getting some more blog posts in here. We have a PR for another one that kind of from Craig's doc about the release process and how we go through iterations, that kind of thing. So we've converted that to a blog post as well, and we should put that up here soon. I was chatting to Jim as well, who I've asked if he wants to put a post together about the cyclic, what would you call it, cyclic complexity work that he did. See if we can get a kind of a smaller consumable post version of that together as well. And I was chatting to Evan too to see if he wanted to do something about his internship. So a few posts lined up there and a couple ideas myself, just to drum a bit more information. Oh, sorry, a bit more kind of a bit more activity here as we go towards the V1 release. That should coincide with downstream stuff and generally kind of get a bit more buzz going with community work on foot with the CNCF stuff. So to actually write a blog post, it's actually fairly simple. I think I had the link in the doc here as well, in the notes, but let me find it here. So it's the Kuadrant.io website, this one here. There is a little bit of information here on how you put together a blog post. What it comes down to is just have a file under source blog, a markdown file. The format is fairly simple. That's it. So if anyone's interested in putting blog posts together, have a look at the bit of README here, or give me a shout. I don't mind helping people writing posts as well if they want. So yeah, that's it. Any questions on that one?
Very nice, David. Thank you.
Cool. All right, I'll hand the screen back to you.
Okay. Okay, we are right. I would even say that those last 3 items could even be housekeeping. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. It doesn't really matter, but you know.
I moved them all, I think. Except for that.
Yeah. No, true. No, I know, but I didn't read David's entries before the call, so I didn't know for sure what it was about. You have one more in this list, Craig. You want to start your list of things, basically?
Yeah, it's just a suggestion, which is there's a lot of great work being going on in different areas like DNS and TLS, user experience, auth, gateway API, etc., all the different areas that we have on the board. And there are a number of those that have individual meetings, which are public, which is great. And it makes sense for those to be very detail oriented, very deep in discussion, technical conversations. But I want to make a suggestion that maybe if decisions are made or if things are surfaced there, that they're actually brought here as even just as a brief summary or a link to something to read or whatever it may be, so that more of this team and this community can consume the output of each of those individual areas without having to necessarily attend each of those calls. So it is a bit of a selfish ask of my side as well, but I think there's value beyond just my value. But yeah, I want to put that suggestion out there, because I feel like there's a lot of vertical sort of like narrow focused groups of people, which is important, but leads to sort of silos potentially of things that may be happening, decisions that may be made. Like a good one is Alex's one there today, right? Like whatever comes out from that discussion should probably surface here as like, hey, we decided to go this route with the well-known attributes, right? So that kind of thing.
Yeah, I like the idea. Shall I just make in the template for the call a list of the areas so people can find their way and put something if there's something to say? Does that make sense?
Yeah, why not?
Okay, and let's just continue. Like we have no demos still. I want to call like if somebody wants to show something, that would be super nice. Hopefully one of these days. Skipping that, progress and housekeeping, and that's again you, Craig. You go.
Yeah, this is my fault. So I said I'd do a release, and then I didn't because I got, like everybody else, I got too busy and it fell off my list. So I'm re-putting it on my list. So I want to start Zero.9 release tomorrow. I'm going to talk to Dee to just see if there's what stuff I should know. But some things I do know is we need to pin down which versions we want to release. And yeah, so that's my question is, are there any new versions of subcomponents that we need to create that people are aware of? You don't need to answer that now here. But if you know, if you are an owner of one of these components and you know what version should be going out in the next release, put it beside the component, and that way it's easier to know what to actually input into the release GitHub action. Yeah, hopefully one of the outcomes from doing this release will be some form of release doc in the Kuadrant operator. We've got quite a lot of release docs in other components, but we don't have one in the Kuadrant operator right now, which maybe will say like, you need to do this at the community call first, maybe whatever, you know, that's just an example, might not have that in it. Yeah, so that's it. Starting that tomorrow, so please add stuff there if you know. If you don't, I'm going to start chasing you down.
Anything you want to comment on, Didier? No, given that you are the most knowledgeable, we chatted earlier. It should be easy this time.
Yeah, it should. Famous last words, of course. I'm still not sure about if we need to cut release for Authorino or not. I remember like last time that it was a bit of a pain, but for reasons that were related to OLM actually. So probably need to sync with Guy and ask him if he's, you know, if we're actually willing to cut a release for Authorino or not. We would do it anyways, if that's so. But it should be very straightforward, and probably tomorrow when we have like the sync with Craig, we can actually take a look at that together and recapitulate what needs to be done. There's like new workflows, by the way, that they mimic the same way, that similar to the DNS operator and Authorino operator, which makes it easier to do the release the same fashion that Authorino does already for a while.
Cool. Last bit of housekeeping, if there's nothing else on that, this is mine anyway. So the next bit of housekeeping has got quite a lot of RCPRs open, and today I was like, oh, I should go look and see what I need to review and what I don't need to review, and that's quite a difficult thing to do. So there are a number of RFCs that have been open for over a year, for instance. I don't know if they're still relevant or not right now. So I guess my question is, how do people feel if I close all of them and then you can go reopen them if you care? Or is there a better option for like actually cleaning these up? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So I was thinking about this a few weeks ago. I'm wondering if a small group of people that kind of are technical leaders, I suppose, that can also bring in other people if they want, bring in SMEs. They kind of take ownership of that repo and the RFCs, and like they can meet every week, every 2 weeks, whatever, and their goal is kind of to own those PRs. And if more information is needed, they can request that. If they're not going to implement it or don't think it needs to be implemented, they could like leave comments as to why and just close it off. In other words, just have a particular group that their task is to regularly look at those RFCs and just prevent it getting to this stage again where there's loads of ones that we're not sure are they still relevant or not.
Yeah, I'm wondering if, are you seeing that kind of focused on specifically on RFCs, or could we use this part of this call to do that? I think what we need to do initially is like a cull, right? Like just to go in there and start culling stuff. But then afterwards, hopefully, like there's not that many RFCs open. So when a new one is opened, it could be summarized here if the owner is here and discussed here, something like that.
So a few thoughts there. So doing a call now, I think that's reasonable, and asking people to reopen that's fine because of the state it's in now. I think this call is really good for people to openly discuss an RFC and share wider. But I think there might be still value in having a smaller group of people that kind of do see it to its ultimate state of whether that's merged or closed because it's stale, or closed because it's not going to be accepted, if you get what I mean. Someone kind of takes ownership, some small group takes ownership of it, to make sure that it doesn't go stale again. You know what I mean? Like a working group, if you want to call it that, something like that. And it's some group that meets separately to kind of discuss as the leaders, should this progress or not.
I don't know if Gateway API is a good example or not of this stuff. I'm wondering how because GEPs are open and there's a lot of them open. I think they use a stale bot like Alex suggested, which is useful to at least trigger an individual to go remove the stale bot.
Okay. So again, I think there's multiple things here. So I think what Gateway API does, and Kubernetes in general, there is a clear life cycle for those proposals to move through. When I initially did the RFC thing, I didn't want to go like on such a, I don't know, heavy process for like, oh, it's experimental, and it goes to something else and so forth. So I thought the whole PR thing itself is all we need. All that to say, I don't think it's necessarily a problem. I think some RFCs out there, mine, for instance, some of them are there for a long time, and I don't even know they're not making progress, but let's say the Envoy Gateway one, which relates to coming with a gateway provider embedded inside Kuadrant when you don't have it. Like we said, we do that, and it requires sort of that work, upstream work to happen first, or whatever. So I guess stepping back, should we actually undo that decision making and go to a proper life cycled? Because I think, well, Guy isn't here, but he actually proposed that in the past, right?
I think it would help at least keep things a bit more organized. I think the first easy step that you suggested makes sense though, which is to have the stale bot, just let them get closed. If they're actually not relevant, the owner of them won't go back and remove that. That's like a at least
that I think is true
basic.
for whatever, right? So PRs issues throughout all our
Sure.
So I think that's useful. Period. So
Yeah.
yes, I agree. I think we should do that.
So
Whatever.
that's like step one. And that will certainly help limit down the list a little bit. And then, yeah, having a life cycle process. I think it is nice for people to know, I'm going to create this gap and this is what's going to happen. And like, what do I do next? And how do I move it on to the next step? And like, I know I found that valuable with like Kubernetes and Gateway API, where it's okay, do this and then like do this and then do this, and then you'll get to this state, and like that's how you get stuff done, right? But yeah, it is a bit heavyweight also, so there is a balance there.
Just on the Gateway API and on the gaps, I think it was on some of those calls where at the start they might spend a bit of time discussing open gaps. So yeah, I think it was your suggestion, Craig. Like we could have it as an agenda item on this call. At least then people would know, oh, that's when my thing will get discussed if it's not discussed async. And then we'd know where we're going from that. Does it need more information? Or is someone kind of against it and you need to go back and think about it? Having that in the life cycle may be a good thing to have.
Yeah, because what I'm thinking is that you could limit it to like 1 or 2 a week, and it's like, okay, we're going to discuss this one. What's left to do with this? Is it still relevant? Should we close it? Should we accept it? You know, like just kind of keep prodding at things to make sure that they actually move along. Because I think part of the issue is nobody's prodding anyone, so they just get left. Yeah, so I do. So I suppose that's like the second item. You have to define a life cycle, but let's not make this like you know, a planning application to the local council type level of process here. Let's try and keep it relatively lightweight. And maybe the first step of that life cycle is to just discuss 1 or 2 of them at this call and make a decision that, yeah, it's still relevant and you need to do X, Y, and Z, or no, it's not, we're going to close it. Planning granted.
Makes sense. Thanks. Nobody has any other comments? Okay. Could have a quick look at the board just for fun. Somebody's holding up their hand. Roman style thumbs up or down. Okay, not getting it. Okay. So we're on the last day of the current iteration, like we said before. Again, check if the issues that you're working on are actually up to date as to where they are in the board. Well, some of these transitions are automated, but most are not, I think. So there's quite a lot in progress still, which is fine. It basically means that if you can't complete it today and you still want to continue working on it, it moves. You'd have to like move it to the next iteration. So yeah, from 0.10 to 0.11, and then you have until September.
So wait,
10th.
That's a manual process like this. Okay,
I think so.
I think it is right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nice.
If you hate it, you know, write a script, Alex. It'd be great. Thanks.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Anyways, whatever. I think GitHub sucks, and we all want Jira, even though we all hate it. So we're never happy.
And Jira sucks. And
exactly. We have what we deserve. That's why we can't have nice things.
Yep. I'm not going to go into that conversation. Yeah, so everybody just does their own issues. It's not that many issues per person then, so it should be good. I don't know if anybody wants to highlight something that they suddenly think about. I wanted to talk about that in this call. Now
The only thing I would highlight here is the managed zone is almost gone. The last PR is almost merged, so that will be disappeared and no more, which I think is hopefully the last breaking change to DNS policy. There may be additional things added, but not removed at this stage. So after that, once I'm back to PTO, I'll probably try and drive the public API discussion to make sure that we're aligned, starting by just looking at each of the policy APIs and seeing what should be the same across them, and going from there. So I will bring them.
Okay. Thank you. That's all. Then we're going to end it with a roundtable. So again, like last week, for those who weren't there, we started because David suggested that, which is a good idea. Just like if you want to say something, raise your hand. If you don't raise your hand, this call is being recorded now. So, if you have something to share, one thing, okay, it's not a stand-up. It's just like pick one thing from the list of things you've done. So just go over the, like everybody can see the order of everybody raising their hands. So you can just know when it's your turn to speak. So that would be, please now. Okay, and I'm first. Oh, that's funny. So my update would be that I spent some time going through. There's a whole list of Jira issues in the Jira project. Didn't make me happy being in Jira, with attached docs to it with all sorts of compliance stuff that we have to. And I did a first scan of them, asked some questions to some engineers. There will be more engineering involvement because I don't know the answers to all of those questions, but like some of them are answered by, for example, we're using CPA, so that's all taken care of, checking that that's actually the case, these kind of things. That's one of the things I did, and the one I remembered. So
that sounds very downstream.
Oh yeah, damn, that's true. Okay, gonna have to edit this recording. That's very downstream, Greg. You're completely correct. But still, there's value there for upstream. But yes, you're right. It's a bad example. Okay. Anyway, next, Didier. Go.
Yep. So I've been working on the WhatsApp shim for preparing for the external authorization feature.
Just open the list or if there's nobody else who wants to say something, maybe.
Okay, then there is me. I was trying to. I'm sort of going to talk for Guy partially, but because we're introducing cell inside the auth config, we're doing this as an addition. So hopefully I get my versioning right. I couldn't find my notes. But so this will be introduced as V1 Alpha 3, I guess, which is hopefully the thing that will become V1, or it's maybe beta 3, I think. So whatever, but so replace the word in the middle by the proper thing. The issue with doing that and introducing that is that today we're at 1 beta 2, I think, but we're actually storing everything in 1 beta 1 inside etcd. So we have a conversion hook for all that. So we need to get rid of that and do it the other way around and move to 1.2, 1 beta 2 as a storing mechanism. Then 1.3 is fine because it's only additional. There's no conversion needed. And then we're in a good shape for releasing auth config v1 effectively, which is what we're targeting for that. So I'm a bit thorn in multiple things, but still trying to get the cell in auth config. But when that work is ready to be merged, it can't be merged until that other work has happened. So I guess that's all for help or whatever.
Thanks. Okay. So anybody else wants to say something, or everybody's just back from holiday or didn't do anything interesting? That's good too. Thank you for the silence. Okay, I think we're at the end of the call. We're still in time. So thank you for being here. See you next week.